Several minutes later, Jiang Chen and his party entered the secret realm. Its interior revealed a lush, green mountain full of trees and grass. In the middle, a mysterious village was surrounded by snowy mountains, presenting a stark contrast to the greenery below. The sight was breathtaking, and everyone in the party was drawn to the summit for a better view. At the back of the group, Chu Bulang marveled at the beauty of the village. He couldn't help but wonder aloud why there were no monsters in sight, which struck him as odd. Jiang Chen, always the silent observer, stood still, taking in the scene without a word. His eyes scanned the village with a mix of curiosity and caution. Duan Feng, his hand resting on his waist, broke the silence. He suggested that the monsters were likely hiding within the village houses. This theory made sense to the group, and Duan Feng proposed that they search each house individually to root out any threats. Sometime later, they descended from the mountain and approached the village. As they walked, Duan Feng spoke up again, this time with a strategic plan. He asked the others not to worry and assigned roles to each member. Chu Bulang was tasked with attracting the enemy's attention and facing them head-on. Duan Feng would deal the primary damage, utilizing his combat skills. Yun Xiaoku, the group's healer, would be responsible for keeping everyone healthy, while Jiang Qian and Mu Hanqiu were to follow closely, ready to assist where needed. The team acknowledged their roles with a unified, understood. In the heart of the village, they encountered a large rock. On its surface was inscribed the words, "The Shining World," which emanated a strong and malevolent aura. The ominous feeling around the rock made everyone uneasy. Duan Feng, Yun Xiaoku, and Jiang Chen approached the stone cautiously. Duan Feng raised his hand, signaling the party to halt. His instincts told him that this stone was dangerous, and he urged everyone to be on their guard. Standing beside Duan Feng, Yun Xiaoku gripped her magical staff tightly with both hands. She voiced her discomfort with the village, explaining that the atmosphere felt dark and sinister to her. Jiang Qian stood motionless, his face a mask of silence, saying nothing as he observed the unfolding events. Next to him, Yun Xiaoku, determined and resolute, decided to cast a purification spell over the village. She closed her eyes, raised her hand towards the sky, and began to channel her blue magic. The magic radiated from her hand, spreading a soft blue glow throughout the entire village. Jiang Chen watched intently, bringing his hand closer to his face as he examined the magical dust that floated in the air. His eyes widened in surprise. He thought to himself, "This buff is incredibly powerful. Not only did it clear people's minds, but it also significantly boosted their attributes and energy levels." As the buff spread, a gentle wind began to blow. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The sky darkened, taking on a sinister red hue. The town's lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows as an ominous energy gathered above. Jiang Chen and his team felt the change immediately. They approached cautiously, their senses heightened, alert and ready for anything. The source of this evil energy became apparent. It emanated from a mysterious stone placed at the village entrance. Duan Feng was the first to notice. His face grew serious, and with urgency in his voice, he turned to the others, commanding them to run. But before he could finish his sentence, the stone began to absorb him. As he felt himself being pulled in, he managed to shout a warning, "Stay away from the stone. Call for reinforcements immediately." His words echoed as he vanished, leaving the team in shock. The situation grew even more dire as a brilliant light descended from the sky, enveloping the town in a magical barrier. This barrier was meant to contain them, preventing any escape. Suddenly, several system windows appeared, flashing urgent warnings. The messages were clear. The once serene village had transformed into a perilous secret realm of level 30, now known as the Village of the Dead. This secret realm was of nightmare-level difficulty, and the conditions for survival were stark. Either eliminate all the undead within the village or defeat the final boss. The system left them with a cryptic note. The light fades away, darkness flourishes, and that's when the door to the kingdom of death will finally open. The smoke dispersed, revealing the scene. Jiang Chen and his team had been teleported inside a secret realm. As he regained his bearings, Jiang Chen found himself alone inside an old house. He quickly checked the system information and realized with a shock that the secret realm had mutated. What was supposed to be a normal level had suddenly escalated to a nightmare level. A drop of sweat trickled down his cheek as he absorbed the gravity of the situation. The secret realm was originally level 30, but its sudden increase in difficulty made it a daunting challenge. Jiang Chen knew that, given his current level and abilities, Exploring this dungeon alone would be extremely dangerous. He recalled the advice given by Duan Feng, a senior member of his team. Duan Feng had always emphasized that if anyone got separated and found themselves in danger, they should immediately return to the teleportation point. Determined to follow this advice, Jiang Qian decided to use his teleportation stone to return to safety. Without wasting another moment, he approached the wooden wall of the house. With a powerful kick, he broke through the wooden planks, expecting to find his way out. However, instead of an exit, he found himself in another room. This room was dimly lit by lamps hanging from the ceiling, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Coffins were scattered across the floor, and on the wall, there was a picture of an old man. Jiang Qian stepped cautiously into the room, his eyes scanning every corner for a way out. But all he could see were the coffins and the unsettling portrait. As he examined the room more closely, confusion set in. There seemed to be no exit. The old man in the photo began to draw his attention. Jiang Qian couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. To his horror, the old man's image seemed to come to life, his eyes following Jiang Qian around the room. Then, the old man started to smile. Jiang Qian's heart pounded in his chest. Was this an illusion? Why was the old man in the photo smiling at him? He didn't know, but he was sure of one thing. He needed to find a way out of this nightmare-level secret realm, and fast. While Jiang Qian was still wondering what to do next, the atmosphere in the room grew tense. The sound of creaking would suddenly fill the air, and Jiang Qian turned his head toward the source of the noise. To his astonishment, the lid of a coffin placed on the floor of the house began to open slowly. Something dark and sinister started to emerge from the coffin, and Jiang Qian could see sharp claws glinting in the dim light. His confusion turned to alarm as he watched the scene unfold. Several undead creatures, grotesque and menacing, began to crawl out of the coffin, one after another. These creatures stared at Jiang Qian with hollow, soulless eyes. According to the system's analysis, these were level 30 undead creatures. They possessed dangerous skills such as charge, decapitate, and corrosion, among others. The system also noted that these creatures were immune to normal physical attacks, making them even more formidable foes. As the undead creatures began to approach Jiang Qian, he quickly assessed the situation. They moved with a disturbing speed, preparing to launch their attack. Jiang Qian, not one to back down easily, assumed an offensive stance. He raised his hand, and it started to emit the poisonous mist of Little Nine. His face was serious as he watched the undead creatures draw closer, inch by inch. Jiang Qian knew that since normal physical attacks were useless against these creatures, poison might be the key to defeating them. Just before the undead creatures could strike, Jiang Qian moved with incredible speed. He released the poisonous mist of Little Nine, and within seconds, it began to spread throughout the room, enveloping the undead in a thick, toxic cloud. Without waiting to see the full effect, Jiang Qian swiftly left the house. He took a powerful leap and landed gracefully on the roof of a nearby house, his movements fluid and precise. From his new vantage point, he watched as the poisonous mist continued to fill the room he had just vacated. However, to his dismay, the undead creatures soon emerged from the house, seemingly unharmed by the poison. They moved as if nothing had happened, their immunity to physical attacks proving to extend to the poisonous mist as well. Jiang Qian stood up, his eyes fixed intently on the approaching figures. He realized that poison, typically an effective means of attack, had little to no effect on these undead creatures. This revelation troubled him because it meant he needed a new strategy. He knew that dealing with these creatures required the unique abilities of a mage. His thoughts immediately turned to Yun Xiaoku. He had to find her as soon as possible, as her magical skills would be crucial in this fight. As Jiang Qian was lost in his thoughts, Little Nine suddenly appeared beside him. She clenched her fists tightly and brought them close to her chest. Her eyes sparkled with a strange, hungry gaze as she looked at the undead creatures. Her mouth opened slightly, and drool began to drip from the corner of her lips. With an eager expression, she turned to Jiang Qian and asked, "Can I devour them?" Jiang Qian was taken aback by her sudden appearance and even more so by her unusual request. He had never seen her like this before. With a confused look, he asked, "Are you sure you can devour the undead creatures? I thought devouring was also a physical attack." As the undead creatures began to draw nearer to the house on which Jiang Qian and Little Nine stood, she was enveloped by a powerful aura. Her confidence was evident as she continued to gaze at the creatures. She explained to Jiang Qian, "For me, they are delicious snacks. I can eat them." Jiang Qian watched the undead creatures, contemplating her words. After a moment, he nodded and said, "All right, go ahead and try eating them. But be careful. If you find yourself in trouble, I'll help you escape." Upon hearing Jiang Chen's advice, Little Nine gathered her momentum. With a murderous look in her eyes, she began to advance towards the undead creatures, thinking of them as simply food. Jiang Chen, who was standing on the roof, watched her with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. He couldn't help but think she was impressive. Little Nine moved with incredible speed, piercing through the bodies of the undead creatures. She cut them into pieces and devoured them in the process. Her movements were swift and precise, almost like a dance. As she floated around, she pulled her knees together, placed her hands under her cheeks, closed her eyes, and smiled. It was as if she were in heaven, enjoying a delicious meal. Jiang Chun observed her and couldn't help but be amazed. He remembered that she came from the abyss, making her essentially similar to the undead creatures. Both Little Nine and the undead creatures belonged to the abyss. Now that Jiang Chun had the divine evolution trait, he knew that Little Nine could grow and become the queen of the abyss, surpassing the undead creatures in essence. As these thoughts crossed his mind, Jiang Chun extended his hands towards the undead creatures. At that moment, his body began to emit Little Nine's poisonous mist. He looked at her and smiled, knowing she was capable of devouring the undead creatures. Seeing her enjoy her meal gave him an idea. He decided it was time for the other insects to come out and enjoy a good meal too. Jiang Chan stood on the roof, his body beginning to emit a powerful energy. This energy radiated from him, releasing a swarm of insects that buzzed with an eerie intensity. He gave them a clear order to separate and be cautious, ensuring they wouldn't be discovered by his companions. In a matter of seconds, thousands of insects emerged from his body, spreading out like a dark, writhing cloud. They moved with purpose, targeting the undead creatures that lurked in the shadows. The insects attacked ferociously, their tiny jaws gnawing and tearing at the rotting flesh of the undead. As they devoured these nightmarish beings, a system window appeared before Jiang Chen's eyes. It informed him that his spiritual pets had successfully killed 3 low-level undead creatures, earning him a total of 21 points. Little Nine, his loyal companion, joined the fray, eagerly consuming the undead creatures. As it fed, another system notification popped up, awarding Little Nine with 4,602 points. The insects continued their relentless assault, slowly but surely devouring the undead. Another system window appeared, congratulating Jiang Chun on leveling up. He had advanced from level 17 to level 18, gaining an additional point in each of his attributes and 10 potential points. A sense of triumph washed over him as he re-entered the house. With a swift motion, Jiang Chen extended one hand to the side and clenched his other fist. He gazed at his hand, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. The speed at which he had gained over 500,000 experience points and leveled up was astonishing. He couldn't help but think that this secret realm was a paradise made just for him, a place where his strength could grow exponentially. Now that the house was clear of undead creatures, Jiang Chen turned his attention to a curious photograph of an old man. Previously, the old man in the picture had been smiling, but now, his expression had changed dramatically. He looked terrified, trembling with fear. Jiang Chen approached the photograph of the old man, who was also an undead. He placed his hands on his waist, started looking at the photograph, and with a smile, he asked the old man why he wasn't smiling. Just then, Little Nine manifested herself beside Jiang Chen. She, too, started looking at the photo and informed Jiang Chen that everything outside had been eaten. Jiang Chen began to point at the photo with his thumb, and with a smile, he praised Little Nine for doing a good job. He then asked her to look at the photo and asked if she could devour it. Upon hearing this, she started looking at the photo with a hungry gaze. Seeing this, the old man became even more afraid and couldn't help but start trembling. At that moment, the old man's photo exploded into pieces, leaving Jiang Chen and Little Nine in shock. They couldn't help but wonder what was happening. Just then, a system window appeared. They had successfully scared off the level 35 elite Death Guardian. As a reward, the system granted Jiang Chen 8,701 experience points. The pieces of the photo fell to the ground, and Jiang Chen and Little Nine started looking at the pieces, feeling a little depressed. At the same time, somewhere else in the village, an intense battle was unfolding. Duan Feng, a skilled archer, faced off against a horde of undead creatures. He was surrounded, but his resolve was unshaken. He held his bow tightly with both hands, his knuckles white with the strain. Determination blazed in his eyes as he swung his bow forcefully, using it as a weapon to fend off the advancing enemies. One of the undead creatures attempted a sneak attack, lunging at him from behind. Duan Feng reacted swiftly, using the sharp string of his bow to slice through the creature's hand. He couldn't help but feel a surge of relief. The longbow was his saving grace in this dire situation. Without it, he might not have stood a chance against these relentless foes. As he fought, Duan Feng's thoughts drifted to his companions. He was especially worried about Jiang Chun, who was still under level 30. If anything happened to Jiang Chen, Duan Feng didn't know how he would face his boss, Jigang. The thought of failing his team gnawed at him, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the immediate threat. In the midst of his battle, a bright system window suddenly appeared in the sky. It informed him that his teammate had killed a lower-level undead creature and an elite rank guardian of level 35. As a reward, his team had gained 12,161 points. Duan Feng looked up at the system window in shock, his body trembling with a mix of fear and amazement. He couldn't comprehend what was happening or who was responsible for such impressive feats. Before he could ponder further, another wave of undead creatures appeared, charging towards him with relentless fury. Duan Feng knew he couldn't take them all on alone. Grabbing his bow with one hand, he began to flee. His teeth clenched tightly as he ran, his mind racing. This place, a secret realm, had mutated into something far more dangerous than he had anticipated. He had no idea who was behind the rapid slaying of so many monsters, but he knew he had to find out. After thinking about it, Duan Feng came to the conclusion that the responsible person for this killing could not be someone weak. At first, he thought it could be Chu Bulang, but then dismissed him since his physical attributes were very passive. Chu Bulang was strong, but his strength lay in endurance and defense, not in swift, deadly attacks. Duan Feng remembered how Chu Bulang often served as a shield for the team, absorbing hits rather than dealing them. Then he thought it could be Yun Xiaoku, but dismissed her as well. She was a powerful mage who could restrain undead creatures with her spells, but she wouldn't be able to kill them in seconds. Yun Xiaoku's magic was more about control and suppression, binding enemies and weakening them over time. Duan Feng had seen her in action, weaving complex incantations that immobilized their foes, but never delivering a killing blow with such speed. He immediately ruled out Jiang Chun since he was too low-level. Jiang Chen had awakened the poison and creation class of all things, which would have no effect against the undead. With a surprised look, he began to look ahead and started questioning if the person who was killing the monsters was Mu Hanxiu. He didn't know if she was that strong. Mu Hanxiu was a bit of a mystery to Duan Feng. Could it be her? Could she have been hiding her true strength all this time? The undead creatures slowly started closing in on him. Their grotesque forms shambled closer, their hollow eyes fixated on him with an eerie hunger. Seeing this, he began to run even faster. The fear of being overwhelmed by these abominations spurred him on, his heart pounding in his chest. The landscape around him blurred as he pushed his body to its limits, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Now that there was someone on the team who could defeat the monsters instantly, he thought there was time to save the others. The realization gave him a glimmer of hope. He just hoped that Jiang Chun could hold a little longer in this mutated dungeon. At the same time, in another part of the village, someone placed their hand on a wound they had on their shoulder. This person was very injured. She was none other than Mu Hanxiu. Behind her, a horde of undead creatures chased relentlessly. Mu Hanxiu was covered in scratches, her body battered and bruised. She clutched the wound on her arm, trying to stem the bleeding. Blood began to trickle from her mouth as she opened it to breathe, each gasp a reminder of her desperate situation. She didn't want to die. She was the only one in her family with a hidden profession, and she had a duty to participate in the Tianjiao camp and revitalize her family's fortunes. But as her strength waned, her hope for survival began to fade. Her energy was nearly depleted, and she couldn't even use her primary ability, speed, properly due to her exhaustion. Tears streamed down her face as she thought of home, the one place she yearned to return to, the place she didn't want to leave behind. Just then, she noticed several undead creatures running away. Her heart skipped a beat as she wondered if a teammate had come to her rescue. This thought gave her a glimmer of hope, and she pushed herself to walk faster. Several seconds later, she reached the end of the alley, and a thick, poisonous mist began to appear from around the corner. Recognizing this powerful energy, she felt a surge of relief. Could it be that she was saved? But her hope was short-lived. Her strength gave out completely, and she collapsed to the ground, her arms barely able to support her weight. Blood dripped from her mouth as she closed her eyes, her thoughts racing. This wasn't good. The undead creatures were closing in, ready to attack. In a panic, she extended her hand forward, desperately asking for help. At that moment, Jiang Chen appeared. He stood there with a serious look, staring at Mu Hanxiu. The sight of him made her gasp in shock. She reached out her hand towards him, her eyes wide with surprise. How was it possible for him to be so strong? And why were the undead creatures fleeing from him?